Welcome to the Practice Squad Podcast, episode 16. I'm Gabe, I'm here with Carter, and today we're going to be breaking down the AFC East. We're going to be previewing all four of the teams, and we're going to do that for every single division leading up to the NFL season. That is going to happen. It's been a while, but we're gonna start with the New York Jets. And Carter, let's start off with a little game. So I'm gonna give you a player compared to Le'Veon Bell. I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
who do you think, would you ever have Le'Veon Bell or this guy for this coming season?
Okay.
I'm not going to do like Saquon or Ezekiel Elliott because obviously we'll know the answer to that. But let's start off with some guys who, there could be some hot takes for. So Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers.
Aaron Jones.
Okay. Both of them are good receiving backs, but Aaron Jones has been he had quite a good season last year. All right, Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon.
All right. Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler.
Okay. Chris Carson.
Chris Carson, he fumbles the ball a lot, but he was like top 5 in rushing yards last year until he got hurt. But that being said, I'm taking Le'Veon.
Yeah. All right, Melvin Gordon.
Le'Veon.
All right. I think for contracts, I'd rather have Gordon, but Le'Veon's the better player. I agree. All right. Todd Gurley.
Ooh. I'm actually going to go Gurley there. I think Gurley's going to have a good season. I know you don't think that, but
we'll save that for the NFC South preview, but okay. And we'll go, okay, let's go James Conner also.
Le'Veon.
Okay. And the last guy I'm going to bring up, David Johnson.
Le'Veon for sure.
Okay.
What about Frank Gore?
Now, that's what I was going to bring up next. Would you rather have Le'Veon Bell or Frank Gore? I know this is a very tough decision.
According to the Jets training camp, I'd rather have Frank Gore.
Yeah, so, there's a lot coming out in training camp that Le'Veon Bell is not the best running back for the Jets. I'm really curious to know why that is.
Well, they said Gore was taking the handoff and hitting the hole right away, and Le'Veon was not, which... Le'Veon's style has always been about patience, so I don't know why that makes Gore better. They're just different types of runners. Le'Veon likes finesse. He makes a move and then makes a quick cut. Gore just goes.
So let's rewind Le'Veon Bell's career going into 2019 March. He held out to get more money, and then he doesn't get more money, and he signs with the Jets. So that's more of torture than anything.
Yeah.
He had a very disappointing year. It's not all his fault because the offensive line wasn't great. Coaching sucks.
Plus, he just had a year off.
Yeah, that too. And now let's go into 2020 where there's now trade rumors of trading Le'Veon Bell. The whole organization's a mess. They got rid of Jamal Adams.
Actually, that wasn't a horrible trade for them, though. If their direction is they want to rebuild, then that was a great trade for them. But it feels like they still want to win games.
Yeah, the Jets, people think the Jets are going to be super bad every year, but there's water flowing, okay. But I don't know, because the Jets are always in this weird position where they're not really the worst team, but they're definitely not the best. They'll barely miss the playoffs, or they'll just be an average team.
They always lose a bunch of games to take them out of relevance, but then win a bunch to take them out of a top draft pick, it seems like.
Right. So let's go back to Le'Veon Bell. Now we're going in 2020. Now we're going into training camp news. So he's said some controversial things on Twitter, and that pisses off Adam Gase. And then he continues to have an argument with Gase. And then he also has hamstring tightness that he continues to deny. And then you have late 30s running back in Frank Gore coming for the starting job.
That, and they tried to trade for Ballage. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, but they tried to trade for him, and that only fell through because of a failed physical. So it seems like they're moving in a direction of moving on from Le'Veon Bell, but I don't know who's going to take him. Not that he's a bad player, but I don't know who needs him enough to take on his contract.
Yeah. Okay. I think let's go with most disappointing player on the Jets for this coming season. What's your prediction for that?
I'm going to go... I'm actually going to go Sam Darnold. I think that people are actually putting expectations on him of like he's gonna have a good season. I've seen him be a breakout candidate for a lot of people, and I just don't think so. And that's not even necessarily a knock on him, but being coached by Adam Gase with the lack of a supporting cast he has, with the swinging door of an offensive line they have, I think Darnold's in for a really rough year.
Yeah, and you have to also look at the Jets have 4 new starting offensive linemen, and it's really tough to build camaraderie with super quick, especially in the circumstances we're in right now, for them to actually gel together like that.
That's a very slept on piece of offensive line. Like they need reps together to work together. Like the way an offensive line gels can make or break a team, and people don't really realize that.
Totally.
And having George Fant doesn't help a lot.
Yeah, George Fant on the right side is going to be a problem for the Jets. My guy, we're going to stay on the offensive side of the ball. It's Brashad Perryman. Now, I'm a Ravens fan, and I have some very strong opinions against this man. And he was horrible. He just couldn't stay healthy. He couldn't catch balls. He was just fast. And, well, he went to Tampa Bay because we're like, hey, screw you. You can't do anything. And then he goes off because Jameis Winston targets him a ridiculous amount at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Now that bought himself into like a 1-year, $8 million contract with the Jets. So it's smart giving him 1 year. But Brashad Perryman is your number 1 receiver. I mean, maybe Jamison Crowder.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. And I mean, I don't know what expectations they have for him, but he's not going to give you number 1 receiver production. He's not going to give you number 2 receiver production. I highly doubt he's going to give you number 3 receiver production. He's not the right guy.
No, and I mean, they did draft Mims, but it's not going to be enough. Not this year. The lack of supporting cast around Sam Darnold is just going to be a huge problem. The entire offensive side of the ball is a huge problem for them this year.
Well, yeah, and when we think about like this for most disappointing players, if Denzel Mims ends up being pretty good, that's not going to look good for Brashad Perryman.
Right. I mean, this season could very well make or break the rest of his career in the NFL, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into their breakout player that you think is going to help the team out. I mean, there's not a lot of help that can be done to turn the Jets around, but who do you think it's going to be?
I got tight end Chris Herndon. There wasn't a ton of candidates for me to pick from, honestly.
It's like a 2-player list.
Yeah, it's Crowder and Herndon for me. I think Crowder has a really good chance of getting hurt, and I think him and Herndon and maybe Mims will be in line for a ton of volume and a ton of targets, especially early in the season. And I just think that whether he is an extremely talented player or not, that volume is going to translate to not big, but better numbers than you would expect from him. So he's my breakout player.
Yeah, so I'm between 2 also, but it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. I think Quinnen Williams has a really good shot. I mean, he did have a gun, I think something like that in the offseason. So it's not great. But the guy I'm going to go with is Marcus May, free safety.
Oh.
I mean, I've been hearing a lot of good things about him coming into training camp. It feels like he has a lot more freedom now that Jamal Adams is gone. He's kind of the man of the secondary now. I mean, he's a solid coverage guy. I mean, a 50% completion percentage when thrown against him is not bad. So, I mean, he's probably not going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think he'll be serviceable and he'll help take care of at least a little bit of a role that was the hole that was left when Jamal Adams got traded. So now we're going into X Factor. Who's the player that you think needs to turn it on for the Jets to have a really good chance of, I mean, what's their expectation? Making the playoffs?
I don't know about that. That's a lofty expectation. For me, I'd say it comes down to 2 players again, and it's Becton and Bradley McDougald, actually. And I think I'm going to go Becton because they drafted him to take over that left tackle spot, and as a rookie, that's a rookie on a bad offensive line in a year where the reps will be limited because they didn't practice together very much. If he manages to gel well with that line and turn it on this year, I will be super impressed, and that'll help them a lot. But I don't know. I don't really see that happening much, and that's why I don't see them being that great.
All right, here's mine. Joe Flacco. I'm kidding. It's going to be Sam Darnold. You think he's going to disappoint? Yeah, I mean, possibly. I mean, there's not a lot for him to succeed with, but if the Jets want to be good, they need their quarterback to finally develop. Sam Darnold was interesting at USC, to say the least. Uh, I don't know. This is a make or break year. I mean, if Darnold doesn't have a good year this year, this might be it.
What do you mean?
For the Jets, like,
oh,
it might be time to start exploring other options. And if Darnold doesn't work out, you're probably going to have a higher pick, like top 10 probably if you're the Jets.
Yeah.
So there's that. So now I'm going to go with you for the ceiling and the floor of the New York Jets this season.
I see their ceiling at 9-7. Personally, I really don't think there's any way they make the playoffs. I don't think 9-7 is good enough to make the play. Well, maybe. I think right on the edge of the playoffs is their ceiling at 9-7, and I think their floor is 4-12 area.
That's exactly what I have too. I completely agree with that. We're gonna now shift into the Miami Dolphins. They're kind of an interesting case. I mean, they exceeded expectations by quite a bit last year.
Well, I mean, their expectations were 0-16, so.
Yeah, and they ended up winning, 5 games? That's right. That's impressive. So when you're looking at the roster, though, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to start. Josh Rosen is still on the roster. Do you have an opinion on that?
His career's... I feel bad for him. He never really got a fair shot at all, and after the first few years of his career, I don't think he ever will. I mean, it's really unfortunate. He's the clear 3 on this roster. And if you're the 3 on the Dolphins, I don't know where you're going to go. I don't know.
Yeah. So now I'm going to, because we were talking about this before, should the Dolphins sit Tua for the entire year?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
Why is that?
Well, maybe not even the entire year, but you can't throw him in there in week 5 or 6. It's just bad. I mean, for him to sit behind a veteran quarterback like Fitzpatrick, who will always go and win you a few games at least, and to fully master the offense and the playbook and just get comfortable being in the NFL and adapt to the NFL schedule, I think is really important for him. Mahomes only played 1 game his rookie year. We saw what happened. I'm not saying Tua's Mahomes, obviously, but I feel like Dwayne Haskins is the example of what happens when a rookie is thrown into starts when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And Tua, I mean, there's still health concerns too. And I just don't want his career to be derailed by him starting in a year that really is pointless for the Dolphins.
No, I don't want to talk too much about the offense because, I mean, the defense matters too, but there's a lot of intriguing pieces on the Dolphins offense, and they're going to have 4 starting offensive linemen that are new, and 2 of them are going to be rookies. That could be an issue, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is more capable of handling the heat, and, I mean, you're not going to ruin Ryan Fitzpatrick's development, obviously.
Right.
So they have a lot of running backs that, okay, and we're going to go into breakout players now probably, but I just want to see if there's any running back out here that you think is going to break out, because Miami doesn't have like a superstar one, but they do have quite a few good ones. They have Jordan Howard, who they picked up from Philly in free agency, Savon Ahmed, UW
right,
running
they
back.
just picked him up from San Francisco.
Yeah, Kalen Ballage somehow found his way back on the roster. I doubt he makes it.
Mr. 1.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, man, he is not efficient at all. Matt Breida, who is efficient when he's healthy, Myles Gaskin, and Patrick Laird. And Patrick Laird actually got quite a few carries last year. Is there any one of those guys who you think is just going to carry the torch for running backs, or you think there's just no one's going to stick out?
I don't think there's ever going to be like a designated number 1 guy in this backfield, but I do think that having Howard and Breida together is actually a decent punch at running back. I mean, Breida's a very good 3rd down back. He's not going to grind for yards and knock people over, but Jordan Howard could. And I actually like that quite a bit. I think that if they can get any help at all from their offensive line, Howard and Breida could be a really decent running back duo.
So now we're going to shift into who do you think is going to break out for the Dolphins this year?
I think it's going to be Mike Gesicki. I really
man.
do. And this is especially if they mess up and start Tua. If they do start Tua, I don't think he's going to be throwing bombs to Parker like Fitzpatrick will. I think that the tight end is really a security blanket for any inexperienced quarterback. Well, any quarterback at all, but especially a young one. But even if it's Ryan Fitzpatrick all year, I think that Devontae Parker is going to get a lot of attention, and I think that Preston Williams and Mike Gesicki are going to reap the benefit of that, especially Gesicki. So he's my pick.
Yeah, call me crazy, and I mean I'm going to bring this up too. I'm going with Preston Williams. Shaq Lawson has a chance of being that breakout guy too, but Preston Williams has not been able to stay healthy. When he's on the field, he is amazing. In 2019, he played 8 games and had 428 yards, so he's almost on pace for 1,000 with a horrible team, by the way. I mean, Devontae Parker is probably going to take some of the heat off of him anyways. Because when they play the Patriots, Stephon Gilmore is probably going to guard Devontae Parker.
Right.
I mean, mainly. So I think Preston Williams has a good shot to make a ton of plays, and he might be in the conversation for the Dolphins' #1 receiver next year. We're gonna go to the most disappointing, and again, how can you really pick a guy on the Dolphins?
It's tough. I mean, I'm looking at the entire cornerback position on the depth chart, and I think Byron Jones, honestly.
I agree.
And I think there's a lot of... I think he'll be a good player. And there's a lot of players on the team that'll be worse than him, but for the contract he just got, I don't think he's worth it at all. Him, Xavier Howard, they should not be the 2 highest paid corners. And I don't know. I think Byron Jones is going to let a lot of people down. And I know Dolphins fans were excited about him. Well, at least the ones I know. And I think he's going to let them down.
And the thing is, Byron Jones is... I mean, and this isn't... I mean, these stats don't obviously determine what kind of player they are. Byron Jones only has 2 career interceptions.
Right. Like, stats for secondary people and defensive linemen are very often misleading. But for a corner to be being paid that much, and you're being paid as a shutdown corner, and to only have 2 interceptions in your career? That does tell you something.
Yeah, and a completion percentage when quarterbacks throw on him a 53.1. That's pretty good. With the contract Byron Jones signed, I don't know. And I mean, Kyle Van Noy is there. I doubt he's going to take a step back as much as we're thinking. Byron Jones was kind of just a flop. I know that sentence didn't really make sense, but I don't know, man. I agree with you that Byron Jones is not going to be as amazing as Dolphin fans hope that he's going to be. So now we're going to go to X Factor. I mean, Miami looks like they could potentially sneak into the playoffs. I mean, it's a long shot, but they could potentially sneak into it. They have a better shot than the Jets. Who's their X Factor?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I think the Jets have a better shot, but, I think I'm going to go back to Byron Jones. I think that...
You're just going to hate on him and then pick him to be their X Factor.
I think he's going to be disappointing, but if he's good, he can be one of the keys to their success. I think he's going to be one of the pieces that's most important to them. If he plays like a shutdown corner and earns his contract, then that defense looks a lot better than what I predict it will be, and because I think he's going to fall down to like an average, slightly above average corner. So he's both my disappointing and X Factor.
Okay, now here's the last thing. So we're looking at middle linebacker, Camus Groiger. I think I'm saying this right. Camus, Groiger Hill, and Jerome Baker are going to be starting. The Miami Dolphins traded away their 2021 fifth-round pick and Raekwon McMillan to the Las Vegas Raiders for their fourth-round pick in 2021. How much of a mistake was that?
I actually like Jerome Baker, and I don't really know much about Groiger Hill, but I don't think that's going to be I don't think that's going to be like a huge groundbreaking move either way for them, personally.
I think McMillan's ceiling is actually kind of good. I mean, he's a tackling machine. I mean, you'd love to see his pass coverage get better, but I mean, as a tackler, I think he's solid. And I don't know. I trust what Brian Flores is going to do because he's a great defensive coach. So, yeah, it probably won't make or break anything, but still, that's just a thing to keep an eye on just in case something goes south. So now we're going to move on to the New England Patriots. Now, they let a lot... Oh, yeah. Crap. Okay. We can cut this out. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so what's your floor and ceiling for the Miami Dolphins?
Oof, it's. I think my floor is 2 wins. I think floor is 2-14.
Two?
I really yes.
They're gonna take a step back.
That's their floor. That's not my prediction. That's their floor.
Still, that's okay.
They're not a good team. Anyway, and I don't think their ceiling is higher than 6-10. I think they're the worst team in the AFC East. I like the Jets more than them.
All right.
Personally.
All right, we're gonna move on to the New England Patriots because I don't think the Dolphins are gonna be a playoff team either. You'll see on the screen what it actually is. But the New England Patriots, they let some key guys walk, and they have some key guys who are holding out. Maybe not holding out is the right word, but they're taking absence and playing this season due to the virus. So what's Bill Belichick thinking here? Are they? I mean, here we'll start with their floor and their ceiling. What do you think?
I think their ceiling, if everything goes right, and they still coach a dominant defense, and Cam Newton is actually fully healthy, and Michelle is better, makes actually a few runs more than 10 yards. I think their ceiling is 11-5, and I like their floor all the way down at honestly 5-11. I think they could be anywhere in that range.
Yeah. I think the linebacker situation, safety situation, because they lost some key guys. I think their secondary is still good because you still have Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore, and Jason McCourty, and J.C. Jackson, and Jonathan Jones. Man, their corners are still great. Their safeties are fine.
I like Jonathan Jones a lot. I think he's a very slept-on piece of that defense.
I agree, and I think J.C. Jackson's just as slept on. So their secondary is still good. We're gonna shift over because I completely agree with you with what you said and the floor and ceiling. But I want to talk about breakout players. I think Josh Uche, the guy that they drafted out of Michigan, I think he can make a key impact to the Patriots defense, especially with guys like Dante Hightower opting out. So, I mean, they're going to give him a really good chance to play. You can't doubt Bill Belichick, really, when it comes to draft picks at this point. I mean, he misses a lot, but I think Josh Uche is a guy that's going to absolutely help this defense become or maintain like a top 8 defense, probably.
That's fair to say.
So give me your breakout player.
I've seen a lot of people say N'Keal Harry as their breakout player. I don't buy it at all. I don't think he's going to be that good. But I got to go Cam Newton. I do. I think that people's memory of Cam Newton isn't MVP Cam, isn't elite quarterback flashes of greatness Cam. It's hurt shoulder, short-arming throws, just not healthy Cam. And I think that if he really is fully healthy, he's going to have a really, really good year compared to what we've seen from him lately.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be one of the front runners for comeback player of the year.
So I'm going to go to X Factor now because that's the guy who I think needs to step up the most for the Patriots to be productive because you're not going to get it from Jarrett Stidham. I think the team around Cam is still possibly playoff caliber because I really believe in their coaching, but the players have to do most of the work. Cam Newton, it's tough for quarterbacks to come back from shoulder injuries, and he also suffered a foot injury. He suffered an injury on pretty much every single part of his body. For a guy like Cam who takes a lot of hits, he's mobile. I mean, at this point in his career, it's really tough to tell what he's going to be like. I love Cam Newton. I just don't know how he's going to do because, like you said, if you get MVP, not even MVP Cam, but a little bit less than MVP Cam, you're going to be a playoff team with the Patriots roster. But if you're going to be Cam Newton, who hasn't played in a while and has dealt with shoulder injuries, who can't throw as well, then New England's probably going to look like we're picking like the top 20.
Right. I think my X Factor, I think it's going to be Sony Michel. I mean, he's been splitting first-team reps with Damian Harris. That's the report coming out of camp. And obviously, James White's going to handle the receiving part of the backfield. But I think if Sony Michel can actually become more of a playmaker, because, I mean, what we've seen, every carry is 2 to 4 yards. If he can actually rip some off and if he can become that player that they drafted him to be, then I think that adds a huge dimension to their offense, and that'll help so much.
Yeah, and when you look at his averages at Georgia, and I mean college is a little bit more different than pro, but I mean he wasn't very efficient last year. When you look at his 4 years at Georgia for his averages, 6.4, 5.2, 5.5, and his senior season was 8. And he's a great scorer. I mean, he's a great goal line guy. I think James White and possibly Lamar Miller might take away from some of that, but Sonny Michel's a 1,000-yard rusher if he's healthy and if you call the right plays for him. I don't know what they were doing with Michel last year.
I think there's going to be too much of a committee this year for him to be a 1,000-yard rusher, but I get what you're saying.
Well, yeah. No, I'm not saying that he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I think he could if he is in the right
He's that
place.
level of back, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to go to the most disappointing on the Patriots. It's kind of tough to pinpoint a guy.
I got N'Keal Harry. I think he's going to be the same as last year. I think he's going to be disappointing. He's not going to make much impact. I mean, the reports from camp were that he's struggling with separation. Kind of important for a receiver to be able to separate. And, I mean, people who defend Tom Brady, like myself, always blame the receivers and weapons for not getting enough separation last year as the reason that their offense was not very good. And I don't see N'Keal Harry improving. I think he's going to be still behind Edelman and behind Sanu. They don't really have any threat at tight end, but I think in terms of pass catching, he'll definitely be behind James White. I don't see him having a very good year.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and there's not really anyone else I'd say is going to be disappointing because so many of these guys already are slept on. I think the only one who may disappoint, and I'm not confident in saying this because I think he will be good, I think Cam Newton has a really good chance of disappointing, though.
That's true. His expectations are all over the place, though. I mean, if people expect him to be MVP Cam, then you're probably right. But this team is a giant question mark to me.
Yeah. Well, we'll move into someone who's probably a little bit more certain. That's going to be the Buffalo Bills. So they made some big splashes this offseason. I mean, they picked up Stephon Diggs, which was a position, the wide receiver 1 position was a must for the Buffalo Bills if they wanted to further go into like deeper playoff contention. So we're going to go with their breakout player. Who do you think that's going to be?
There's actually quite a few to pick from here. I mean, Josh Allen obviously is a candidate that a lot of people like. Devin Singletary is a name that comes up a lot. But I'm going to go Dawson Knox, the tight end. I think Stephon Diggs is going to get a lot of attention because he's the clear-cut number 1 option in their passing game. And I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. Like I like Zach Moss and I like Singletary, but I think they're gonna throw the ball a lot, and they're gonna see what they really have in Josh Allen this year now that he has a legit wide receiver 1. And I like John Brown. I think he'll have a good year, and I think him and Knox will benefit a lot from the attention that Diggs is gonna get. I mean, Dawson Knox had a slept-on year last year, and he has playmaking ability. Like he's not the fastest, but he's not slow by any means, and he will knock you over. I like Dawson Knox to have a good year this year.
Yeah, he's just a slept-on guy who doesn't get any media attention at all. There's a few players. I think Tremaine Edmonds has the potential to become a top 5 middle linebacker this year. He's not my breakout player, though, however. I think it's going to be tough for Devin Singletary, too, because I think the Bills are really set on running a committee. And you saw, they drafted Zach Moss out of Utah in this draft. And also they have TJ Yeldon there. You don't know if he's going to get cut or whatever, but he's still a talented back. I think it's going to be really tough for Singletary to separate out, kind of like a Michel situation. But the guy I'm going to go with is Ed Oliver. He's a disruptor. He's a great pass rusher. He's a great run stopper. He's just a great anchor at the defensive line position. That's going to be very important for the Buffalo Bills when they go up against teams like New England, where they run up the middle of Sony Michel a lot. Or with, apparently Frank Gore for the Jets. That's going to be important to do. So that's the guy I'm going to go with. We're going to shift over to most disappointing now on the Buffalo Bills.
I'm gonna go with Josh Norman. I don't know what expectations he really has, but I think whatever they are, he's not gonna meet them. His Carolina elite status was a fluke. He showed that when he was on the Redskins, and I don't think he's gonna start. I think Levi Wallace is gonna win the cornerback spot opposite Tre'Davious White.
He was also underrated.
Right, I like Levi Wallace a lot. But yeah, I think Josh Norman, I like the idea of them signing him, and if he can get back to even close to where he was, then it was a great idea. But I just don't think that he's good anymore. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, the guy I'm thinking about going with here is, I mean, the Bills. They're an interesting team because I feel like there's a lot of guys who are kind of underrated and just don't get the attention they deserve. I'm going to go with Josh Allen.
It's disappointing?
Yeah.
You love Josh Allen.
I do love Josh Allen. I wish he wasn't in the AFC. But I think people are expecting too much of a jump from year 2 to year 3. I don't think the Bills are... I was about to say I don't think the Bills are a playoff team. Obviously, they're a playoff team. With that defense, it's still amazing. I don't think Josh Allen's capable of leading his team that he has right now to a Super Bowl. And I think that's what the Bills are trying to go for this year. Trading away picks for Stephon Diggs is a big reason why I'm thinking that. I mean, Buffalo, their window's still pretty open because Josh Allen's still young. I think it's really unfair to say that Josh Allen is going to be a way more accurate quarterback. I don't think that can... It's very rare when quarterbacks just go from a guy that airmails people 15 yards to just spot-on accuracy. And I think that's something that Josh Allen... He's still going to be a rushing threat. He may get a little bit better at passing. I mean, if he doesn't, then that's going to be a problem. But I don't think he's going to take the jump that everyone's expecting him to make. I think he's still going to be an average quarterback after this year. So now we're going to go to X Factor. Carter, tell me your X Factor.
My X Factor is Josh Allen.
There we go.
I think no matter what, this team's a playoff team. But for them to make a playoff run, Josh Allen needs to meet at least some of those expectations that are being put on him. And I think that the Bills drafted Jake Fromm to put pressure on him because he has been kind of disappointing. I mean, they didn't expect him to have this lack of accuracy, and if he doesn't step it up, I really don't think they'll have any problem putting in Fromm for one game as like a get it together. And so I think that if Josh Allen performs really well, they are a legit contender. And if he doesn't improve at all, then they're going to squeak into the playoffs. I mean, he matters a lot to them.
Yeah, and Jake Fromm being a phenomenal texter, by the way. No, I'm kidding. That's horrible. Yeah, I can see that. Josh Allen, man, I'd hate to say that he's not going to be that great, but obviously he is a big X factor. But I'm going to go with Josh Norman. We're kind of just bouncing around these guys from disappointing to breakout to X factor. I think if Josh Norman is what he was in Carolina, which is a long shot, I think Buffalo is going to be scary, and that might be the best cornerback duo this year if Josh Norman works out. Him and Trey White.
Oh, if he's back to Carolina, Norman, it's not even a question.
Oh, yeah. And then you have Levi Wallace also. Like, man, woo-hoo, that's going to be so good. But, I mean, that's a long shot also. But I think if you want the Bills to be a team that potentially is a dark horse to get into the playoffs, Josh Norman showing up is going to be big. So now we're going to go floor, ceiling. We both said they're playoff teams.
I think my floor for them is 9-7, and their ceiling is 12-4.
Yeah, I think 12-4 is a little too high. I mean,
that's why it's their ceiling.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I'd put them around like 10-6, 11-5, because I don't think Josh Allen's going to be as good as everyone else thinks. But with that being the case, that concludes the Practice Squad podcast, episode 16, with Gabe and Carter. We'll see you guys next time for the AFC South. Goodbye.